Hi everyone, thank you for joining. Today we'll be discussing how to maximize revenue and conversion rate this 2020 Cyber Week. My name is Lauren Bermudez and I'm the Director of Field Marketing here at Namogoo. I will be your host for today's webinar. Just a couple of quick reminders. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Our audience today consists of e-commerce teams from leading retailers, so don't be afraid to ask any question you might have. We love receiving questions from the audience and look forward to taking them following the panel discussion. Additionally, this webinar is being recorded. You'll receive a copy of the recording within 24 hours. You can review the content again or perhaps share it with a colleague. Over the course of the next 45 minutes, we will cover how to remove friction from Black Friday, Cyber Monday online shoppers, prepare for increased demand this holiday season, and maximize lifetime value by enhancing the customer experience. So what's Namogoo all about? Namogoo prevents customer journey hijacking. Customer journey hijacking is a widespread problem whereby unauthorized ads are injected into consumers' devices and web browsers. Once these ads are running, the injections appear to online visitors throughout the e-commerce site, disrupting their online shopping journey and diverting them to other websites. These ad injections include product ads and recommendations, pop-ups, banners, and UI hijacking, including inline and in-text redirects, targeting text, links, and buttons. The majority of these ads promote competitor websites and similar product offerings. Our customer hijacking prevention solution detects and blocks these unauthorized ads. Once these invasive ads are removed, the skimming of web traffic to competitors is prevented, and we see a conversion uplift rate of 1.5 to 5%. Namogoo's solution runs on Microsoft Azure, which enables the solution to analyze large data sets regardless of their source. As a Microsoft Gold partner, we partner with Microsoft's global retail community to provide innovative technologies that improve business metrics and enhance the customer journey. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, Microsoft worked with Crocs to continue to enhance its unique digital experience, making those experiences translate into revenue. Crocs decided to partner with Namogoo to provide a distraction-free customer experience. And now let me introduce you to our panel of experts. With us today, we have Felice Papich, Senior Director of Digital Growth at Crocs. Felice is a seasoned digital expert and is in charge of website revenue and optimization at Crocs. We also are happy to have with us Chris Deringer. Chris is the Senior Director of Industry Solutions, Retail, and CPG at Microsoft. Chris helps customers realize current and future industry trends within their own digital transformations. And of course, our very own Tal Rotman, VP of Global Partnerships and Alliances at Namogoo, enabling customers to optimize a customer journey with innovative solutions that affect their bottom line KPIs. Welcome, Felice, Chris, and Tal. So excited to have you with us today. Let's get into the discussion. How important has adaptability been for e-commerce organizations this year? Felice, let's start with you.
Sure. I think, in e-commerce, in the digital space, I'd say adaptability and flexibility are always critical. But I think that what has popped up over the last year is that speed matters, probably the most. So if you look at a company that's making 20 small iterations, why it takes you the same amount to make one iteration, they're obviously going to be having learnings from those iterations. They're going to be making modifications. They're going to be moving quicker with customer expectations. So you think the more the customer's online this year, the more that they're spending looking at your brand, that's how we have to adapt quicker, make changes, adjust with them because their preferences are going to adjust quickly as kind of the world changes with them. The other thing we've kind of adapted this year is more of a startup mindset. So we are kind of trying to favor action and testing. So we want to make sure that we're agile. Our teams feel like they have autonomy and they're accountable for all of their changes. So we don't have to go through 7 different iterations of approvals. We know that we have these really quick, agile teams that can make changes for our customer on a dime. So it helps us shift with their needs. I think something that we really saw was the shift to digital. And I'd say we were all expecting that. We were looking for it to come, to full force over the next couple years, but it obviously happened in months, right? Because of store closures and changes that happened because of COVID. So we really found that moving inventory around quickly to the channels that need it was very important, especially as we experienced supply chain disruptions, changes for us to be able to take inventory from one channel and move it to the next channel within days was incredibly important for us to kind of keep as a priority. The other one we saw really was like the omni-channel capabilities. So making sure that all of a sudden, because the consumer can't experience our brand in store, how do we bring that to life quickly and in a way that made sense on the digital landscape? So we really kind of been playing with that, making modifications to how we work so we can kind of shift as we learn from the customer what they need in the digital space. And then we've been exploring non-traditional collaborations. So we've really been looking, because we do see all of these different types of effects for the customer online and that they don't have the space to go in store. We have been, partnering with different vendors. We've been looking at different options to make sure that the landscape is friction-free and that they can get what they need quickly. For us, I think, Namogoo is a great partnership and one that we pulled in kind of late into COVID, and one that we saw an incredible impact with our customers. So I think those are key features, launching things like product scarcity, since we do have inventory concerns, as we made changes and shifts. So that was another one to really communicate directly with the consumer about what we have and what we can meet their needs with.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. I would say agility is certainly something that everyone is focused on during this time. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, to follow up with what Felicia said, agility and disruption, right? And our CEO Satya Nadella, he's been quoted saying we've seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. And I'm not just speaking about retail and consumer goods, that's across all industries, FinServ, healthcare, from regulated to non-regulated. And definitely that trajectory in consumerism that shifted, accelerating toward these digital experiences. And you've got the slide up here where we had relatively just a kind of steady growth. And you might have heard people talk about this great acceleration. We've had the Great Recession, the Depression, the Industrial Revolution. But we've seen 10 years of US economic growth or e-commerce growth in just 90 days. And it's not just on e-com. You've got mobile apps being downloaded at 100 and 200% increases. Also, delivery meal services, have you seen those? Also up 100 to 200%. If you look at even non-essentials, those that have anchored in digital and anchored in e-commerce, such as like a Lululemon or a Stitch Fix, those have grown 200%, capturing 22% of the market. And you've got 85% of those consumers saying that they will continue to shop online post-COVID. The point of all this, right? Consumer attention and loyalty is definitely up for grabs. You look at the next slide. Yeah. They're switching brands at unprecedented rates right now. So 75% of consumers have tried different stores, different products, websites, and brands during this crisis. And within some of those stats, we've seen as high as 60% of those consumers expecting to integrate those new brands in stores in a post-COVID-19 world. Of those, we've got, millennials and high income earners driving that higher end, specifically in non-essential lines, where value lines have increased either 2 to 4% in premium in value, where premiums dropped in store, with this whole rise of the homebody, right? And that's, if you think about it, in-home fitness, you've probably seen athleisure, gaming, increasing of all those usage, including grocery and in-home cooking, is up a whole 33 points. So there is and just on top of that, if you look at some of the largest department stores, we look at Q2 just reported, Best Buy reported online sales up 242% combined to previous year. Less browsing, more buying. And, large brands like Target, their Q2 sales as well, went up nearly 200% with same store services comps up by 11. And then by those same store services, it's an astonishing 734% of that. So as we wrap that together, and what does that kind of mean for holiday? Convenience, 56% of consumers are choosing run retail over and over based on delivery options. You want to leverage and promote all of your selling channels out there, from online to BOPUS to Boris to your mobile apps. And I think just, if we look at this all together and bottom line this up, People are thinking, feeling, and making decisions differently. Companies need to consider, where they anchor and put digital transformation at the center of those investments. And back to, the original question, if your platform isn't extensible, adaptable, or just in general easy to use across all your channels, not only is it going to be hard attracting customers with these experiences, but retaining them is going to be really difficult in this unprecedented time.
Yeah, absolutely. Tal, what are your thoughts on adaptability?
So from our perspective, now to the point about the rapid acceleration, we see that retailers and direct-to-consumer brands that have succeeded in the last 90 to 120 days are the ones that acted fast to ramp up their digital experience, like Crocs. And we see that as traffic has dramatically increased, we've also seen that retailers and brands have shifted budget from acquisition to journey optimization. And that focus on the customer journey has been to improve the digital experience, to deliver the best digital experience that they can, and obviously to optimize the conversion rates, which is a natural flow down. So what we see, are ones that things that we take for granted now. In March, these were considered, innovative or bold offerings, things like curbside pickup, filters for items that are not in stock, like Felice mentioned about notifications for shipment delays. That transparency we consider, a given at this stage. But only a few months ago, this was, something that might have been on the roadmap, which is just a great analogy for what a lot of these companies are experiencing. The other interesting item that we've seen a lot of is personalization towards products that are most relevant to a post-COVID experience. Echoing what Chris was saying earlier, I'd like to say that, my family focused on the active aspect, maybe, some zip lines and trampolines. I wish I could say, but, definitely the homebody experience is certainly what we're seeing. But the personalization towards those products is what is key. So all of those things were, they were brand new for a lot of companies. The other thing is, so, those circumstances have definitely fast forwarded capabilities in the digital or the commerce domain. The other thing that what we need to take into consideration is the tools and methodology. You have to have the right tools and methodologies in place in order to measure the impact of those changes. You can't just make those changes without understanding that you've done the right thing, right? If you're fast forwarding, you have to make sure that you're fast forwarding in the right direction.
Absolutely. I can definitely speak from personal experience too. I just moved and kind of fall into all these categories. I want what I want and I want it easily and fast. And definitely I'm also really switching brands a lot, looking at, what does that brand stand for? What are they doing? All those sort of factors that I think everyone is kind of considering at this point. Moving on to the next question. So every crisis is an opportunity. In a post-corona world, what are the major opportunities for retail brands to build their companies for long-term success? Let's go ahead and start with Chris there.
Sure. Yeah. Every company is kind of in a different journey right now, whether you're essential, non-essential, are you a grocer, fashion, apparel, consumer goods, there's sort of different nuances based on each of those sectors. And we look at, a three-phased approach when looking at the pandemic. And that's, the phase one is responding or navigating the now. Many of us, went through this or are part of this, where you've got, stand-up crisis response centers. People protected their employees or focused on protecting around their employees, stress on customer safety, and really reorienting businesses around every, Felice talked about optimizing inventories to strengthen your supply chain, amplifying digital. Those things were all part of that phase one. Phase two, when we think about planning the comeback, and depending on your state or local jurisdiction or area, and even brand and customers, there are various groups that are opening back up right now. And as we think about planning that comeback and recovering, you're building recovery strategies, rethinking business portfolios, assessing market opportunities, and then identifying those to figure out really where and how you're going to reopen and what your new brand might look like. Finally, into phase three, which we talk about as shaping the new normal or really reimagining. You're assessing shifts, you're putting digital at the center of your relationships. You want to ideate on how to evolve products and your services and really plan for that long term, walking us into holiday, right? So these as we mentioned in that phase 3, putting digital at the center of everything, it's centered around, there's that e-commerce perspective and the way that your consumers touch your brand, but it's really any way that your consumers touch your brand. And 3 key areas to look at when we talk about opportunity. One is data. The definition I love here is crude oil. How you gather, synthesize, and refine this right. In that of itself, it's not very valuable. But I mean, even if you look at IoT devices out there, there's a stat that shows 80 billion pieces of data are going to come from IoT devices in the next couple years. So one thing is just being able to source, pull, and better understand and see your consumers and customers. But on top of that are the capabilities. What tools do you have to manage it? We often hear a lot about AI and ML recommendation engines for your employees, for your buyers, for your merchants, virtual or digital assistants for the ability to connect your brand directly with your consumers 24/7, 365 days when your stores are closed. And then finally, with this rise of online protection, right? We're in a whole new world of folks who digitally may do things that they might have done in stores. And on the negative side of that, you can think about crime, fraud, theft, and even in our own environments. That's a place that you want to make sure you're hardening, protecting shrink, protecting your brand, and focusing on that within the new world.
And then Felice, I know that you've been really focused on consumer attitudes and kind of just, going on what Chris was saying about data and really understanding your customers. Where do you see the opportunity?
Yeah, I think for Crocs, as we've kind of mentioned multiple times, the shift to the homebody, right, has been really pivotal for our brand. We really actually believe that customer kind of attitudes and desires are shifting with this crisis. So we've been able, they're becoming more casual, they're focused on comfort. And I think this has been touched on multiple times too, but they really have a different set of criteria in which they're choosing which brands they want to participate with. So, for us, the big focus has been, how do we take care of these customers? How do we communicate to them? How do we not just treat them like another visit that hits the website, but how do we actually take the data we've been presented with, the influx in traffic, the change in behavior, and use that for personalization, right? So personalization has been a hot topic in the market for a very long time, but I think it becomes more important now as the consumer spends more time online, as they have so many different choices, as everyone's trying to talk to them within the day. So how do you actually make it relevant to them? And how do you use everything you've learned from them over the last 8 months in which they've been home and online a lot to provide that enjoyable, dynamic experience where it is more entertaining and it is more engaging, which then leads to better NPS, better lifetime value, all of those key metrics in which we have this huge opportunity to expand because of list growth, because of participation. So that one is kind of like our major focus. The other thing that we kind of gained throughout this crisis is that we are incredibly nimble, that we can change strategic priorities, that we can adapt quickly. So we can do all of this while still focusing on the business as usual, while still looking at those long-term growth items. We can still have these other teams that are focused on innovation, immediate gratification for our customers, all of those components, so they can kind of work in tandem, which I think sometimes feels overwhelming, but this crisis kind of made us see that that's actually easier to do if you just jump in. And I think finally, kind of like on the third tier that we've really taken into account is empathy and passion for our customer, right? This was a really tough time for consumers. It was a tough time for businesses. And the first thing our CEO did was think about how we can give back to the community. So we automatically launched a free shoes campaign within 2 days of the idea in late March. And then what we've done is take that message, that brand voice that we've established, that connection with the community, and then we've transcended that into a full-time partnership over the next year with Feeding America and other Crocs Cares donations and associations with our collaborations that we do throughout the year. So it's really owning that empathy and that voice that we've developed with our customers over this time period and kind of carrying that through into who we are as a brand go forward.
Absolutely. And then Tal, what are your thoughts on this opportunity?
Well, other than implementing Namogoo's solution, I would say that the opportunities for us is kind of focused around the organization, building your organization in a way that is able to read and react to the market with velocity in a way that we haven't seen before is where those are that's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. So for example, I doubled down on the curbside pickup. What we considered innovative in March is now considered the norm, so much so that curbside pickup is actually being run by mom and pop today, right? And so we have a customer outside of Boston and my area that considered this a roadmap item at the beginning of the year. And in April, they implemented in 2 weeks. So that time to market, that responsiveness and agility are the differentiators for those who are going to succeed long term. So, but in order to do that, you need an organization that encourages experimentation, that encourages the accurate measurement of impact. If you can do this right, then you can constantly be pushing the envelope. That's actually the most important thing in order to engender long-term success. This is the time, more than any time in the history of e-commerce, to be bold, right? If you can be bold, if you can have at the same time a fail fast attitude. In other words, you have the right experimentation mindset. To Felice's point about implementing a startup mentality, if you have that mindset, then you don't have a fear of failure. You can still be bold, and at the same time, if it doesn't work on, you can move on quickly. And if you get it right, you can position yourself as a category of one.
So this kind of really goes back to what Felice was saying, sort of about like realizing your own agility and your ability to do things that maybe perhaps were projects you were thinking of, but seemed too complex or too time consuming.
Right.
Awesome. So how can companies stand out during this holiday season as the e-commerce space continues to expand and more companies are amping up their digital strategies? Felice, I was going to start with you there.
Sure. Yeah, I think, for us, obviously, and I think probably a lot of retailers, as we go into holiday, there's the question about how promotional you truly need to be, right? Since we do have more engagement from the customer, they're using different decisioning factors. Cheap isn't necessarily, number one priority. So we will obviously have promotions like everybody else, but we've been looking at different ways to engage the customer and how we can create a little bit more impact at a full price value. Things like that, I think for us really are focusing, if your supply chain can handle it, on innovative product. It's been a big focus for us on bringing things that are kind of, I'd say, immediate to the customer, that gives them kind of some type of value that we can immediately create conversations with them on. We've been really lucky with some of our products that they can go to market incredibly quickly. The other thing that I touched on multiple times at this point, but really that deep connection. So personalization, like how do you leverage all of this data, all of this information you've collected, and really make sure that you actually communicate with the customer and you do it correctly. I think personalization can also go wrong, especially in the holiday if people are gift giving. It's a different type of shopping behavior and it's a different type of product that they're looking at than they typically would for themselves. I have an example of this in which I was shopping in a brand like 3 years ago for a gift for my husband. And now for the last 3 years, all I've been doing is getting emails about men's product, which is not typically what I shop for on my day-to-day. So I think how you shift your strategy and communication with your customer at different periods of the year is incredibly important going into this holiday, and how you're sensitive to what they're experiencing as a consumer go forward. I think the other thing we did is really look at the technology that would make it successful for us to go into holiday with the customer in this kind of environment. Something like that was installment payments. We launched an installment payment and we've seen incredible results. And we feel like this provides the consumer an easy way to transact and transact quickly without it being, something that you have to put a ton of time or thought into. And I think, finally, really I think Tal was mentioning this, really on the side of just being super quick to adapt, right? I think things will change even when we get into November from this current time period. So having that availability and the accessibility for your teams to make decisions on the fly and make changes as a consumer tells you they want something different throughout the holiday season will be very important this year, more so than others.
Absolutely. And then just on the customer journey specifically, so as far as like perfecting it, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like we've talked about, like every brand is in the digital space is seeing a really high influx of traffic. So the most important conversation now becomes how do we take care of them once they arrive? You don't want somebody to come in and have this terrible experience, have friction when they already chose you. They provided, their vote to come see you and your brand and have that conversation. The last thing you want is like an ad blocking technology coming in and taking them and causing probably confusion because they're not sure why this ad is there on the site and driving them elsewhere, or you don't want them to get into the checkout and have errors or form fields or problems in which they're trying to participate with you and they're trying to become an active, loyal customer. And you haven't spent enough time on the journey to make sure that that's easy for them. We have to respect people's time, especially right now, as this environment exists, and make sure that we've given them the most optimal experience. We communicate with them the right way. We make sure that they can convert when they want. We make sure their post-purchase journey, as Tal mentioned earlier, is spot on. We want to make sure that we're communicating delays at any point so that their whole experience is optimal and they want to come back and continue to purchase with us after the holidays.
Definitely. Chris, what are your thoughts on how to stand out? Obviously, Felice has talked a lot about, personalization, perfecting the customer journey, eliminating distractions. What is your perspective?
I guess I can't just say ditto to what everyone. So definitely I'll double down on a few of the things we heard. I think, Tal, when he talked, I think there's an organize and operationalize that he mentioned that's really key. These, creating these human and data-centered cross-functional organizations that can prioritize real-time shopping behaviors for consumer preferences, intentions, and values, very important. And then I think he alluded to operationalizing after. That's, if you assemble your sponsors, your executive teams and stakeholders responsible for touch points across the customer journey to assess not just patterns, but convert insights into actionable pilots and programs, also very important for that adaptability. Now, what Felice had said, you never never underestimate the power of personalization, right? We look at that as proximity, identity, and content in both the behavioral and physical worlds. To take both of those, blend it together to serve up that relevant content. Couple of stats to blend these together, which are pretty staggering that I've seen out there. So 80% of US online adults feel comfortable sharing personal information with retailers to get that personalized experience, right? Now stay with me on the data piece as we go through it. She mentioned, and I love the example around social and connecting your brand to communities for the greater good. Social media has finally really made it quantifiable, advancing in social commerce. I think if the stat I have is right, is 28% of consumers are buying products on social media more than usual. So, and particularly in the stat I do have in Q2 of 2020, growing 104% across the entire ecosystem. So we're finally starting to see an avenue of where you can connect your brand to community, connect folks in ways that are socially and environmentally responsible. And you've got an ecosystem that also allows you to not just connect, but share and capitalize across it. Also, if we think about it, 84% of consumers want brands, social channels to facilitate that sense of community that we got to. And where am I going with this? 70% of consumers overall will share their personal data for that greater good and sense of security that they have. So the ability to connect closer with your customer, as you said, to truly know who that person is, there is a value exchange where consumers today and customers today will provide that. And not just across where you're socially or environmentally, ethically, responsibly sharing that with your customers, but finally convenience, right? Coming into holiday, we've got 50% of consumers saying they'll decide to spend or vote with their dollars based on their ease of pickup or ordering online. Really important. I don't know if you've seen some examples. Domino's allows you to order a pizza just through an emoji text to them directly. You removed, in that case, Amazon, who was one of the most frictionless shopping places in the world, is now frictioned. So, and even arguably, like another example, Starbucks, that, they've changed the way we look at mobile order and pay adopted in the market. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but, 25.4 million users go through Starbucks mobile pay. And to put that in perspective, Apple Pay as a marketplace is 27 million, and Google Play is a distant third at 12 million. So where they've anchored and focused in pulling these the needs of their customers together, understanding them and giving them a journey to understand and follow, while at the same time providing convenience, right, really ties many of these things together. So I think those are some of the ways that I look at standing out in front of a crowd coming up the holiday.
And then Chris, what are your thoughts specifically on like promotions and discounts this holiday season?
Yeah, well, so there's a couple things out there that says, I think that you have to look at this being early. Early stats that we saw showed that people are going to spend more this holiday season, but they are going to spend more earlier. I think 56% of shoppers said that they, as early as into Black Friday. So anchoring around the right promotions and the right offers early will bring those people together. And then looking for those where in the value lines or in the higher end lines, post-holiday and online seems to continue to drive. So it's a delicate mix of, again, consumers will convert on your offers with the right opportunity, with that data that you shift over to them directly. So there's value there when needed.
Absolutely. And then technology innovation, how to do it right to improve business results. Tal, let's start with you there.
Sure. I do have to mention that the Starbucks app certainly receives a lot of my support. I definitely have contributed to part of that 25 million. So there's a lot of noise out there for retailers and DTC brands to understand which technologies to choose, right? There are so many different amazing innovative solutions out there. And so when we think about it, we think about three things that need to be considered when you're making that decision, when you're dealing with that. So the first is you obviously need to have a very strong clever decision matrix that's aligned to your goals. But the other aspect to that is that you also need to build one that is flexible to new ideas, especially as we talked about earlier, innovation and being bold. You need to be able to ensure that your decision matrix is able to accept something new. So for example, many of our customers like Crocs are focusing on how the vendor will impact their top line metrics and how significant that impact will be. But customer journey hijacking was not something that they were familiar with, was not something that they were was in their roadmap. But when they realized the potential value that Namogoo could bring, they were able to flex to that option because they were flexible to new ideas, and then they were able to implement quickly. So that flexibility is one of the very key aspects. Secondly, you need to do a lot of research. You need research on what other organizations are doing, what successes they've seen, and some of the ways of doing that are being involved in community or industry events, whether geographically, obviously not in person so much these days, but being involved in industry events is really, really key. And the third and most important thing in my books is relying on industry experts like Chris and others at Microsoft to help you identify technologies that are going to move the needle, and more importantly, the specific needle that you're trying to move.
And Felice?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo all of those sentiments with Tal. I mean, the thing that we always focus on is kind of twofold. It's strategic agility. So being able to make those decisions quickly, being able to change quickly based on, what is coming up in the market, what is available to you, and then always evaluating with like your North Star KPI. So what are those top line metrics you're trying to achieve? And so how does technology help you get there? And first and foremost, always keeping the customer top of mind, right? You don't want to just leverage a piece of technology because it's there and it's shiny and somebody wants you to put it on your site. You want to leverage it because of the benefit it provides your customer and ultimately your brand at the end of the day. I think for us, we take that to heart and we focus on different lines of our business and we focus on what we're trying to accomplish. So gibbets, which I'm sure not many people actually know what those are, but charms that actually go on our shoes are a critical component for us. They provide a really great opportunity for us to engage with the customer and even the younger customer that's starting to come to our brand. And so we really focus on how these upcoming technologies enable us to speak to that product more, engage more, provide a better opportunity in association with these particular products. Because as you see, like Gen Z, which are the ones that gravitate towards this, like different types of engagement online. And so we need to explore different types of technology, and it's got to be solutions that are different and not your typical model that you see every day. So I think, yeah, I mean, it really just speaks back to a company of, experimentation, taking risks with great data. I mean, risks are one of those things you want to be careful with, and you want to make sure that you have the support behind your data that are telling you you're taking the right risks, but you have to make sure that your environment and your company is comfortable moving quickly and, experimenting with different types of technology in the market.
And your gibbets line, you use that really from a retention, like lifetime value perspective. Can you just give us a little more information about that?
Yeah, absolutely. These are, I think you look at this as an option to consistently engage with your customer. I think it's not like I have to have, 45 pairs of Crocs. I can have 2 pairs of Crocs, and I can purchase 45 different gibbets that allow me to express myself as a consumer every single day. They're low cost for the consumer, and it's something that we can do quickly. Again, making sure that we can kind of communicate in line with conversations that are happening right now, so we can bring different types of topics to market via gibbets in a very quick manner, so the customer has that immediately accessible to them. So we obviously see more repeat purchases within this line. And so it's so valuable. And so for us, we have to always kind of think that there must be technology components out there that can enable us to do this better for the consumer, engage with them with this product, and do it quicker.
Absolutely. Build that relationship.
Yeah.
And Chris, what's your perspective?
Sure. I'll probably start broad and go deep, but, focus broad on the e-commerce customer space. Invent and measure, right, are 2 things to look at. So on the invent side, exploring opportunities to add new customer experiences really at every step to enhance that customer progression. You really have the opportunity now to reimagine the customer experience for a digital, we call it, a digital first consumer, instead of adapting kind of your legacy journeys or old platforms. And then measure. It's not just, I think, the old documented ROI or traditional KPIs. Consider these new customer facing metrics that capture customer sentiment, satisfaction, customer experiences, that results in performance in, kind of these new digital realms. Now, if I think about more specifically as a cloud-based company where we sit, the first step to doing some of these, or one of the steps across this, is saving money by moving to the cloud, right? There are hundreds of millions that can be saved on infrastructure by moving to some of these cloud providers, with capabilities that are coming almost daily, right? So we've seen many of our customers have the opportunity to do that lift and shift, save a bunch of money that gives you then opportunity to invest in these new capabilities. You heard me say digital at the center plenty of times, right? Data is the fuel behind it. Data lakes connected up to these ERP systems, customer data platforms, CRM, IoT devices, mobile devices. Bringing these all together is an incredibly foundational today. And that's what you heard Tal and Felice talk about as far as kind of the new demands and the new stakes. On top of some of those capabilities, a little more, machine learning and AI. You might have heard that for quite a bit, but making sense of all this data. You've got recommendation engines for merchants and buyers on what to source, where to source, down to zip code. You've got these marketing campaigns, and you asked about this earlier, where, in offers like, the spray and pray are definitely out there and have their opportunity, but targeted nurture campaigns have much higher conversion than those that don't. And then I think finally just AI, right? So consumer retail spending we saw is going to reach about 142 billion in 2024, and that's an increase of 2.8 billion from 2019, and that's spending just on these virtual assistants and chatbots. And they can say, if you think about what they can do, they can save time on support costs. They give you 24/7 support, increase that customer satisfaction, engage with customers on questions. And even if you just answer that one question, right, where is my order? Those almost invariably more than pay for the investment that you put together in building that today. So, I think those are probably ways that I'd say, again, anchoring around some of these technology changes that are out there that can achieve the business results you're looking for.
Absolutely. So just moving to some questions from the audience. If you haven't gotten a chance to submit a question, please feel free to now. I do have a couple that have come in. Felice, just for you. How has the digital apartment at Crocs changed since the COVID-19 outbreak? Have you guys grown? What does that look like?
Yeah, we definitely have changed quite a bit. I think as everybody else experienced, we, had to make some choices as to how we could move quicker, but also still make sure that we're maintaining our business as usual functions, that we're not forgetting about future planning, things like that. So we really went through some shifts in structure to make sure that we actually could accommodate kind of, as I believe Amazon calls it, the 2 pizza teams, right? That you have your team that is focused on driving the commercial business every day. They're doing the work they need to do. We're planning for future iterations. And then we also have the growth team that is focused on making sure that we are able to act immediately on opportunities, shift on a dime to make choices and drive kind of those quicker initiatives on a regular basis while we're in this, I'd say, environment, which I'm sure will be around for a long period of time. So we've really structured kind of how we make sure that we can accomplish both. And that was a learning from we kind of had right in the I'd say like the end of March, that we kind of just transcended and made organizational shifts to accommodate.
Great. And then this I'll just ask to everyone. So if you guys have specific comments, please feel free. Would you say this holiday season is more important this year than prior years? Chris, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I think again, I hate to say it depends, but your brand, right? So it depends. Are you essential, non-essential? Are you seasonal versus non-seasonal? And when is your seasons, right? Certain, DIYs or camping, hunting, fishing, or might be more in the summer. But invariably, I mean, the age-old stance of, retail, with Black Friday, make it in the black is during this peak season. I think what's going to be really important and very much about this holiday, I mean, we had this pandemic that was thrown at us. It changed the way that consumers behaved, capitalizing and just being able to meet your customers where they are, incredibly important because, we've seen many, titans of industry change and shift and move and fold. And I think, this holiday season is one of the last opportunities some companies have in COVID to get this right and even keep the future of their brand around. Post-holiday, we're going to see companies who are able to invest, react, respond, and reimagine versus those that didn't. And I think consumers will vote with their dollars, and you'll really see how much that will impact the marketplace, not just during but after holiday and peak season.
And then how has the increase in online demand covered the loss of physical stores? Anyone can take that one as well. Chris, maybe you?
So sorry, yeah, the question was, how's the
increase in online demand covered the loss of physical stores?
How has it? Yeah. Again, I'm not going to give the depend. So per I guess I should say sub vertical, right? It's covered it immensely in areas where you go in through both. I think, as I mentioned earlier, those companies that have hardened in online, or you think of online directly, or have doubled down in convenience, have definitely capitalized on those. There are old stats. Many department stores do this today, where if you're within 10 to 15 miles of a store, but you purchased online, those dollars were attributed to the store directly. And that's because the thought there is that marketing, brand awareness, campaign management, right? Like within 10 to 15 miles, that store drove that delivery and drove that. It was a major contributor to driving that conversion. So some people attribute that through reporting, and you can see that there versus where the other ones sit. It very, very important to where you've seen, companies shift. And I think I talked about the increase online purchases just in these department stores that are even essential, like Best Buy, Target, and some of the others. So not only very incredible and very important, but the conversion rates are helping essentially keep some of those businesses alive that are non-essential, that haven't had the opportunity to open, where their only avenue is through e-commerce.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. I just wanted to say, Felice, Chris, Tall, thank you so much for joining us. We absolutely appreciate you being with us. For everyone attending, we hope you found this webinar to be insightful and informative. We hope you have a great day, and we hope to see you again soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.